So I've tried to do this video probably about 5 or 6 times so far, and each time it either gets too spicy or I just get too confused trying to explain the background. But we're just going to press on. We're going to do this in one take. We're going to do it live. In the words of the late, the great President Barack Obama, yes, we can. So the current leader of the Western cargo cult, Zelensky, president of Ukraine, has announced that he's going to be banning the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. Now, well, I would like to go along with the narrative that some people have been accidentally saying because this whole thing's so confusing. That is not the entire Orthodox Church within Ukraine, or that does not represent all the Ukrainians who identify with Orthodox Christianity. So, to dramatically oversimplify, like 2 or 3 decades of just autism, schisms, jurisdictional questions, just ops from the KGB, ops from the Ukrainian Secret Service, ops from NATO. In the aftermath of the collapse of the Soviet Union, there was kind of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church question was kind of raised again. Historically, because Ukraine was part of Russia, I don't think it really had an independent existence from the time when Russia conquered it from the Ottomans or the Crimean Khanate to it being incorporated to Russia. Historically, the Ukrainian Orthodox Church was subject to the Russian Orthodox Church. It wasn't even really a separate one. It was like a subordinate local branch or something that impact. And when Ukraine became an independent country, people started wondering, should we revisit this? Should it maybe become its own thing? And this, of course, got worse when you had Euromaidan, you had the Crimea thing, you had the escalating war in the Donbass, and kind of all this different stuff. And over time, we've had multiple schisms and reunions and people switching sides and stuff like that. But basically, there's currently two major branches of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. There's the Moscow aligned one and the Kiev aligned one. And we're just going to use that terminology. So the Moscow aligned one is, of course, loyal to Moscow, or was. It's not anymore, but we'll get into that in a minute. But the Moscow aligned one maintained its subject status to Moscow. It obviously tended to be more pro-Russian. On the other side, we had the Kiev aligned branch of the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, which I think is supposedly in communion with the Ecumenical Patriarch of Constantinople, but maybe not. I've heard different things about that. Honestly, if you ever want to just clear your mind, try to figure out how Orthodox communion works. I saw someone did a chart of it once, and it was Byzantine to say the least, and that pun is 100% intended. So there's the two branches, the Russian aligned one and the Ukrainian aligned one. And the question of how much of the Orthodox population follows one or the other is very much an open question. I think you have to take the studies with a massive salt mine. The estimates I've seen are between 10 and 20% of the Orthodox population in Ukraine follow the Russian aligned one. At the same time, though, a lot of Ukrainians just put Orthodox down on surveys. I don't even think they know that there's multiple denominations. I'd imagine a lot of them are just as confused as we are trying to puzzle this out. But I would imagine that there are no followers of the Moscow aligned branch in Western or maybe even Central Ukraine. And it may even be a minority in Eastern Ukraine, because there were a lot of people who got pissed off about the Russian invasion. The church that they're currently banning actually completely cut ties and condemned the Russian invasion. So they're the Orthodox Church of the Ukraine, the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, Moscow Patriarchate, which is not aligned with the Moscow Patriarchate. So, but anyways, so I'd imagine a lot of people have been moving away from that to the perceived more Ukrainian one, especially with these attempts to appeal to Ukrainian nationalism. But Zelensky has decided that in defense of liberal democracy, we need to ban one of our country's major religious sects. We need to ban it. We need to send the secret police in to raid these locations, arrest police, just priests, just shut it down. And this is in pursuit of spiritual independence. And Zelensky would know about spiritual independence. He's a proud Ukrainian, Kievan aligned Orthodox Christian. He is a representation of the spiritual heart of the Ukraine, of the religious majority. I think he makes a good point there. We can't allow a religious minority would deal with it. I mean, as he said, we have to create conditions where no actors dependent on the aggressor state will have the opportunity to manipulate Ukrainians from within. We have to prevent this small religious minority from gaining control over the country. And Zelensky would know that as a proud Orthodox Christian. Actually, no. Right, he was the first Jewish president of the Ukraine, and when he was first in power, we also had a Jewish prime minister. So Ukraine is the first country outside of Israel to have a Jewish head of state and a Jewish head of government. And he's going to come in and he's going to preserve the spiritual independence of the Ukraine. He's going to preserve Orthodox Christianity by banning it. Well, banning some of it. And this kind of gets back to, so let's just be real for a minute. Is the Ukrainian Orthodox Church Moscow line branch a tool of the KGB, the Russian state, and being used to infiltrate Ukrainian society? I mean, yeah. Like, let's not pretend the Russian Orthodox Church has always been a tool of the Russian state ever since Peter the Great. It's basically just exists. I'm not saying that their holy orders are not valid. I'm not saying there aren't a lot of legitimately religious Russians. But let's be real. It's almost always been a complete servant of whoever's in charge of Russia, be it Tsarist, communist, or Zonist, or whatever, Zanist, whatever they call Putin's government. So that being said, it obviously is being used to insert. Well, the KGB is not a thing anymore, but Russian intelligence agents, are they sending like important information, like using priests as artillery spotters? Yeah, 100%. I mean, this isn't even a question. But to me, that's kind of beside the point, because if this whole thing is about defending democracy and defending freedom, and Ukraine's a liberal democracy, and Zelensky is the Messiah who will lead us to a promised land of love and peace and happiness, then they can't be banning religious groups. And this is kind of the thing I hate about democracy, in particular liberal democracy, is it's just bullshit. I just don't like stuff that's fake and Giesler. If your state, like, I don't like that liberal democracy is premised on the idea that people have freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of conscience, freedom of, like, to vote, because they don't. They never have, and they never will in any so-called liberal democracy. The Ukraine, when the Euromaidan happened, they overthrew an elected government. They banned all the opposition political parties. I think during this current crisis, they banned them again. And they've been repressing the Russian-allied religious groups. They've also been oppressing anyone who's a Russian sympathizer. And once again, you could say, well, the country's at war. They have to clamp down on traitors. Yeah, but I don't like it when people say we believe in freedom of speech and freedom of expression and all this other stuff, and they take all the credit for that, and all like the NATO countries just shower them with money and weapons, and then they like at the same time just don't do that. And I mean, this is true. If you live in Britain or Canada or United States, you know that if you express an opinion that's counter to whoever the people are in power, you will be punished. It may not be as immediately violent and obvious as it will be in a more openly authoritarian society, but I don't like the fake premise democracies operate under, that people have like the basic freedom to choose and stuff like that. They might have more freedom than some societies, but it's it's like, let's say that there was, let's just do a thought experiment. Let's pretend that the Crimean referendum was 100% legitimate. Let's pretend that international observers had been there. Everyone agreed that the government, that the people of Crimea wanted to join Russia. Would they be allowed to join Russia? No. Let's pretend that, and although, come to think of it, given YouTube's current terms of service, it's kind of implicit that that referendum would be valid, because ethics in video game journalism is something that can't be questioned. So, if ethics in video game journalism can't be questioned, then wouldn't Putin's election? I mean, they can't even keep their lies straight. They can't even keep the story straight. It's if Eastern Ukraine legitimately voted to join Russia, would they be allowed to? No, because it's a democracy and you can vote and you have freedom of speech, but not if it goes against whoever in power what they want. And once again, I don't really have an issue with that. I think this is probably the logical thing to do. I think it is. I don't really see any issue with repressing people who are an existential threat to your country, to your way of life, to your the society you want to build. I don't have an issue with that. I have an issue with people pretending that they don't do that and playing the game and having this G slur, fake and G slur thing that they try to pull, while at the same time not doing it. So anyways, let's just get through this. The council has instructed the Ukrainian government to draft a new law on making it impossible for religious organizations affiliated with centers of influence in the Russian Federation to operate in Ukraine. Because I'm sure like nothing in Ukraine has ties to Russia. There's no cultural, religious, historical, political ties between the two countries. Unfortunately, even Russia in full-scale war did not convince some figures that it is worth overcoming the temptation of evil. Maybe he's referencing the Lord's Prayer that he doesn't believe in. Referring to the meeting with national security officials, we will have to create conditions where no actors dependent on the aggressor state will have the opportunity to manipulate Ukrainians and weaken the Ukraine from within. We can't allow these minorities to take over our country and to force it into the conflict. We can't do that. Earlier in the day, the Ukrainians, the Security Service of Ukraine reported it found a large number of propaganda materials after raiding a Moscow patriarchate, but they aren't even associated with Moscow anymore. Maybe they just haven't changed their name yet? I don't know. According to a Facebook post from SBU, the items recovered on Thursday included books of xenophobic content with offensive fabrications about other nationalities and religions. Now, I wonder what religion that could be. They found brochures. The found brochures deny Ukraine's right to independence and stress that Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus are indivisible. Read the report. We can't allow people. It's a free country. Also found printouts of pro-Russian songs that glorified the Russian land and called for the reawakening of Mother Russia. All the materials are being transferred to relevant expert research. The song Russia, we need someone like some expert to try to figure this shit out. So that's it. Zelensky addressed his nation on the 31st anniversary of Ukraine voting for independence from the Soviet Union. The 1991 referendum was an honest referendum, and it was recognized by the world. There we go. Referendums are completely legitimate. There's no lack of ethics in video game journalism. And I mean, look at it. The margin was 93%. We haven't seen like a referendum in the Ukraine with margins like 92% uh in a long time. We haven't seen it there hasn't been any kind of referendum that's had like that kind of ratio that has been rejected as being invalid, I suppose. So that is what's happening in the Ukraine as best as I can explain it. I don't know if anyone could really explain it particularly well, but Zelensky is the defender of Orthodox Christianity. We all have to worship him. God bless everybody, and talk to you all real soon.